As a child in Sunday school, there was a song that we used to sing. Now, my mother was the teacher, so I had to pay attention and I had to sing. It went something like this. Be careful, little feet, where you go. Be careful, little mouth, what you say. Be careful, little hands, what you do. I never liked that song. And the reason I didn't, it seemed kind of negative to me, like there was a big brother out there just to catch me messing up. I might say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And I actually remembered that song this week. And the words of Jesus in the synagogue when I was reflecting upon the civil unrest that we have witnessed. I came to another way of actually revisiting and understanding this song, now in a real positive way. You could understand it by saying something like this. I want my feet to lead me to the places where Jesus' feet would lead him. And I want my hands to do the kinds of things that Jesus' hands would do. And I want this mouth to say the kinds of things that Jesus' mouth would say. Now, if we claim to be Christ followers, isn't that what we need to be about? And that is what I want to walk us through in the message. I want to talk about what it's like to be like Jesus was to others. Using that song my mother taught me while accentuating the different parts of the body. The first one would be, do my feet take me where Jesus' feet took him? Jesus' feet, wow. They took him to people who were far from God all the time. His feet took him where the Pharisees' feet would never take them, to parties, to tax collectors' houses, to dinners attended by prostitutes, to the country of Samaria where a respectable religious leader would never go. His feet took him to lepers, just to people. To every kind of people, and Jesus' feet, they really got him in serious trouble. When Jesus was called the friend of sinners, we think of that as some lovely little title, but it was not intended that way in the Bible. That was meant to be a title of hostility. Friend of sinners. Jesus was with them, and Jesus loved him, and the Pharisees hated Jesus' feet. They didn't understand his feet, but God loved his feet. There is that wonderful verse in Isaiah chapter 52 where it says, how beautiful on the mountain are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim to Zion, your God reigns. How beautiful are the feet of those who come with the gospel. Jesus' feet were so beautiful to people who were even far from God, that one day there was this woman who thought that she was lost beyond hope. She gave her greatest treasure to anoint those feet. She bathed them with her tears and dried them with her hair. And because those feet brought Jesus to her, you and I can have feet like that as well. We can have feet that take us to people who hurt and people who may be far from God. They're all over the place. There's another line in that little song, be careful, little hands, what you do. The question here is, do my hands do what Jesus' hands did? Jesus' hands were constantly extended in service to people who didn't know Jesus' Father. In Mark's gospel, there's a wonderful story where a leper approaches Jesus and the man asked to be clean. Now, the law was really strict about lepers. They were in isolation. They were in quarantine. They couldn't have any contact with non-lepers. They had to cry out, unclean, if one came around. They had to stay outside of the village. And even if they touched someone's house, it was supposed to be torn down because it was considered to be unclean. Nobody could come within 10 feet of a leper, not 6 feet. But this leper comes up to Jesus and says, would you make me clean? And Jesus doesn't turn away. Jesus reaches out his hand and he actually touches this man who had not been touched for who knows how many years. Not by his children, not by his spouse. Now, Jesus didn't have to do that. He could have just said a word, but he reached out with his hand and he touched the man and he said, "Be clean." And not only was Jesus not infected by this guy's leprosy, it was the other way around. Jesus was so full of life and health that he infected the leper with his life. Jesus was more contagious with the life of the kingdom than the leper was with his disease. Jesus kept extending his hand, healing lepers, washing feet, clasping his hands in prayer, until at the very end of his life, he took a nail in each hand for the sake of all who ever lived. So take a look at your hands for a moment. How often are they extended in service to others? Maybe you have a neighbor that you could mow a lawn or do an errand for. Maybe there's somebody at work that feels discouraged, and these hands could write him a note, touch their heart. Maybe there's a lonely person in your world. Then there's my mouth. Be careful, little mouth, what you say. Does my mouth say what Jesus' mouth would say? Be honest. Words can hurt. Words can heal. Now, we have to be imaginative and cautious here. How do you have the kind of spiritual conversations that Jesus did in terms of speaking about your relationship and your love for God? I want to have feet like Jesus' feet. I want to do what his hands did. I want to have a mouth that would speak as he spoke. We need his feet. We need his hands. We need his mouth. Now, I'd like for you to just take a moment and pray. And whichever one of those you have a need for in your life right now, maybe it's your feet or your hands or your mouth. And ask God for whatever it is you need so that the song of our lives may be reflective of the gracious love of God. Watch what you say in social media. Would Jesus be saying the same things? Would the images that you repost, would the things that you say, would that reflect honor to God? May the Lord bless us this day as we reach out into our hurting world that needs justice and reconciliation. May they take us to those in need. May our hands and our mouth be expressions of the gracious love of God. And all God's people said, Amen.